Hey, folks. Welcome to 2X Labs. I am your founder and host, Dr. Erika Miley, Dr. E, Erica, whatever you want to call me, as long as it's not jerk face. I have with me a wonderful friend, Joe Molinari, licensed clinical social worker, licensed in Minnesota and Colorado. We're going to be talking about uh, a lot about attachment wounds today, but we're going to flip this on its head. It's going to be about green flags instead of red flags today. We're probably going to talk a lot about cis men, but the reality is that I know, Joe, you get asked all the time about cis men, but overall, that's not your primary population. You typically work with people who are needing to do deep work on attachment issues due to trauma. And so we're going to
That's
be
right.
talking a lot about that, but specifically how to be working through those things and then being able to identify green flags in relationships and how you as a therapist can help your people do that. Joe, welcome. Thank you for being here. Can you share a little bit about your background and how did you get here? Relationships, trauma, sexuality within your practice. Tell me everything.
Sure. If I go too far, just let me know. But I think the thing that comes first to my mind around how did I get here is from my earliest memories in life, I could not see suffering around me. Um,
Mm,
and so as I thought about what I might do in the world, I really couldn't imagine anything outside of not being a part of change, not being a part of alleviation, and caring for suffering.
mm,
Um, so that's the spark. And as I've grown on up, I've really come to believe that relationships are the essence of life. For me, the meaning of life. I know somebody did a documentary with interviews with all the oldest people in the world, and it kept coming up that, when they were thinking about things they might change, it was about relationships.
mm.
So sex is a part of how we express our relationships and express our attachment and play and connect to each other. And it's also a place where a lot of vulnerability is. And there's a lot of trauma that can show up there. So I tend to be drawn to holding spaces where people feel like they haven't been held before. And that tends to be
Mm,
where sex and relationships and trauma converge in my practice.
mhm. Beautifully put, and so much more. Um, th- I, I I admire you as a clinician for how you hold space with people, and I express it in a much more crude way. That's probably not a surprise to anybody who
How
listens
do you
and or
express it?
has listened to it. I'm like, sex is the gasoline to every issue you have ever had.
Yeah, I like that. That's right.
And it is exactly though what you put. It is this level of vulnerability that calls on, I think, a lot of things inside of us that is so different. Um, you describe your life's work as being dedicated to breaking down barriers that keep us from being present with each other and ourselves.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means and how it relates to helping clients specifically identify these green flags that we're going to be talking about?
Yeah. So I work with maybe 60% couples these days.
Hmm.
And a lot of the folks that I'm working with when they start therapy talk about spending years, decades as roommates in a household. And they're looking to figure out, often as last resort, how is this savable? Is our relationship
Mm,
savable? And one of the things that I notice as I'm studying with people is that there is a lack of presence for a lot of reasons, for a lot of reasons that make a lot of sense. We lose track of the desire to be present to each other, or there's a lot of fear about what happens if I try to be present to one another. And what I mean by
mm,
presence is the ability to really sit with someone and to expose some of myself, my emotions, my inner world, and be curious about somebody else's and really hold on to that and be present to it, meaning like really deeply listening without needing to think about what I'm going to say next or be defensive about something or shut down about something. So that kind of presence can create intimacy.
Mm.
And how that can lead to green flags is the more we're present with ourselves, with each other, the more we can see the things that are telling us, hey, my partner's really showing up for me. Or a potential person that I would consider being a partner is showing up in ways that I see could really be good for me. And then
Mm.
within myself, right, I can check out and see how does this fit for my values, for what I really want, for who I am, for what I want and need. And we need a presence, a sense of being able to observe the self, observe our inner worlds, to be able to know all those things like boundaries, wants, needs, desires.
Mhm. Yeah, that's slowing down. I feel like we're gonna probably be saying that a lot in this episode.
Exhaustively.
It's in the slowing down part. I think as a clinician, I mean, to wrap myself out a little bit in graduate school, the feedback I got from one of the people I looked up to the most in my program, he said to me, Erika, you're like a surgeon with clinical skills, but you need to slow down.
Mhm.
So I think that's going to be one of the lessons that you're going to be teaching our clinicians that are listening. Uh, so I want to um, kind of shift and understand like what these green flags might look like because we hear
Yep.
about red flags. We got people on Instagram doing videos about flags and green flags. Love those
That's right.
videos, by the way.
Yeah.
But can you explain what green flags are? What is it important for our clients to recognize these
Yeah.
positive signs?
Right. Yeah. So a green flag to me is it's something that tells me that I'm good to go, to move forward, to move towards, to move closer, to invite somebody into my life.
Mm, mm-hmm.
So an example could be, and this can be different for everybody. I don't want to pretend that my green flag is somebody else's, but for me, a green flag would be somebody who's committed to growth in their life. Right? Somebody who's curious about change in their life and curious about what they could do differently just
Mm-hmm.
throughout their life, not to take it as they're doing anything wrong necessarily. And so when I see that in a person by how they talk, by how they take feedback, that's a major green flag for me. That's really interesting. It's a turn on.
Okay. I actually heard you kind of equate things there
Hmm.
that you equated maybe a value that you have with
Hmm.
what that green flag could look like,
Yeah, right.
maybe even in a conversation.
Hmm.
So, uh, it sounds like one of your values for you is growth. I'm thinking through this for myself. One of my fundamental values is, I would say, curiosity.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, because and the ADHD gets me. I need to have conversations with people that are curious about the
Yeah.
world. I
Yeah.
I don't care what it's about, like, but you got to be curious about it.
So
And
with you.
it and so what I've been married a long time, so what I would my husband and I joke all the time. We don't know what we would do if we were dating. We just don't know. Um, but uh, the curiosity, if I was looking for it in other people, I would likely be asking them questions and then closing my mouth to hear the
Right.
answer.
What
Is
comes
that what
next?
you're saying?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, can somebody be curious with me, right? I can be curious. I
Mm-hmm.
can propose something and they're going to come back and meet me there. And I think
Mm.
that's a huge thing to be curiosity. I think that ties in with growth too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can somebody be with me and curious about, hey, how could we move closer to each other? What could I do? What could you do? What could we do differently? Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
even mean we're doing anything wrong, but how could we just continue to be curious around how we move towards each other and do things in a way that evolves as we evolve?
Mm.
And yeah, a little bit of back and forth on somebody exploring that with me is a big deal.
I I'm thinking of all of my assigned female at birth clients that come to me talking about their dating life And these examples I'm thinking of, they're primarily attracted to cis men. And
Hmm.
one of the things that they come back from some of these dates is that they didn't get asked a question.
Yes, I hear that a
They
lot too.
got talked at
Yep.
for the entirety of
Yep.
the date.
I work with quite a few women in the dating world, and I'm very familiar with that story.
And it's one of the like they identify it every single time as like
Yeah.
I I I'm not going out with this person again.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious, like when you have in the past worked with um cis men in particular, how have
Hmm.
you helped them get to that place of slowdown? I think that we're going to kind of be talking about therapists here in a second, but like
Yeah.
getting them to that place of being able to show someone a green flag, I think is going to be a big part of what we're talking about too.
Right. Yeah, I think about how um, a lot of cis guys fit a stereotype of leaning a bit more logically minded than emotionally minded.
Hmm.
And that's okay. And I talk to cis guys who want to be in a relationship with women who tend to lean a bit more emotional than them, and they were wanting that curiosity towards their emotions, towards their inner world, and towards their experience.
Hmm.
And for men to do that, they have to first get in touch with their own, I believe.
Yes.
And so oftentimes that means helping guys slow down, meaning simply saying, hey, let's take a breath or two here, like let them be in stillness a little bit.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, if I ask them a question like, okay, I see what you're saying here, that you're thinking that this person is really great. I wonder if you can tell me a little bit more about what you feel about that. And then it's, I don't know, that's all I have to say. Well, just wait. What if I don't know could be, give me a minute.
Mm.
And then I can also coach them around, here's some examples, right? When I think about this person I want to date with, I feel excited.
Mm.
I feel this energy in my chest. Goosebumps.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
Twitterpation.
yeah, right, right. Or maybe I feel annoyed. Maybe I felt annoyed about something that was going on. Like all of that is welcome. But I think
Hmm.
all and any movement towards being able to describe your emotional experience, just sometimes can start with your physical experience, helps people get closer to be able to describe where they're at. And then they can have an expanded vocabulary to explore where somebody else is at and what to look out for as they're trying to understand somebody else's inner world and how to expand that for them too.
Yeah.
What do you think? Does that jive with how you see it?
I that the slowing them down again, it's our keyword of the day.
My clients
Uh
talk about making t-shirts about this. I talk about it way too much.
maybe maybe with a therapist we need to start with it first and just be like,
Yeah,
slow down.
that's right.
Slow down. Uh I I find that too, especially in less so I do work with a lot of couples in my practice. I see this a lot in the couples work that I am doing where I'm trying to help both of them slow down and express the feeling. And so
Mhm.
often the cis men that are part of some of these relationships I'm working with, they are quick to want to fix their own emotions
Right.
and then fix the other person's
That's right.
emotions,
Yeah,
and get out of the scenario. It seems, at
exactly.
least as
Get out
I'm
of presence.
as I'm experiencing it, it seems like it's driven by fear or
Yeah.
anxiousness. Would
It's
you say
scary
that
to be
that's the
present with that.
case
I think that's
for
absolutely
them?
true. And I'm sure different people would describe it different ways. I don't want to speak for everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
often when I'm sitting with people, there's some sense of like, let's take a straight cis relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe in a cis dude, I hear my partner say, hey, I'm really frustrated about what happened last night. And now, immediately, what I could go into is like, well, like, but I told you it was going to happen that way, or whatever it is, right? I could get a bit defensive, and I do want to escape it because that frustration might mean something about me. And often when I get guys to slow down enough, and That's everybody. When we slow down around our reactivity,
Mm,
there's often something there about what it says about me. And so
yes.
for a guy, that could be something like, I'm not enough. I always get it wrong. I can't get it right. There's something inherently wrong with me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's eventually going to need some care. But to your point, that fear is often carries an underlying belief that pulls me away from an experience because it's too much to bear.
Yes.
And so for guys and other people, what they need is to get under the surface there and get to that belief and figure out what it needs to care about it so that they
Mm-hmm.
can feel more and more able to be present because that fear loses some of the power when I'm able to start working with those beliefs in a different way and care about them in a way so that I feel
Mm.
more present.
Yeah. I I absolutely think that this is the way, as the Star
This is
Wars
the
taught
way.
us. This is the way. The Mandalorian. I think you're describing. I know, all of my assigned female at birth clients, the way that it can stereotypically look for them is that they may not rush to defensiveness quite often, especially if they're dealing with something like perfectionism or some of the
Yeah,
because of trauma or other mental health conditions. They'll jump to the people pleasing. The
yeah, right.
I'm gonna fix it before you even have a problem and
Yeah,
ignore any of my own feelings, but
yeah,
that it's ultimately any version of this is disingenuous to the person that's in front of you, but it's also disingenuous to yourself.
that's right.
It is that double-edged sword of trying to fix it before or fix it while it's happening
That's right.
without slowing down to be able to experience it.
And I think that's a good shift in words, right? Instead of fixing it, we move towards experience it, and we
Mhm.
experience it by learning to be present with emotional experience. Because,
Yeah.
the thing we know is that at our core, in relationships, we have these three attachment needs. Do you hear me? Do you see me? Are you with me?
Mm.
And ultimately, when we get to our needs around presence, they're always circling around those three things in one way or another. It might be worded differently, but always those things. And so slowing down allows me, Erica, to fully hear what you're saying
Yeah.
instead of getting wrapped up in my own shit so I can't really be present to you. But when you really feel me, get present to you and really try, like, hey, is this right? Is this right? I think I'm hearing this. Is this right? Then we start to be on the same team too. So we can look
Hmm.
at a problem together and be more attuned together. There's
Yes.
another piece around how then we need to attune to ourselves, right? To be able to do that.
Yes. And how do we attune to ourselves as clinicians? But I am kind of curious, like you're already leading into the question. Beautiful job, Joe.
Yeah.
How do these recognizing green flags
Uh,
contribute to the deeper intimacy and connection within relationships? How does it get it there? I think you're already opening up the door.
mhm. How to connecting to the needs lead to deeper connection?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So I often think about this can happen in conflict in long-term relationships, but it certainly can apply to dating and getting to know someone too.
Hmm.
Um, when disagreements pop up, as they inevitably will, we can often feel like we're like two heads facing each other,
Hmm.
trying to win something, trying to be right, because there's something more important under that. But often, like trying to get our point across and trying to be right in this argument, or trying to be safe in some way. And when we're really attuned to each other and figure out what's really going on, and our partner can feel that curiosity, as you said,
Hmm.
and that's a back and forth, then I often think like instead of two heads facing each other, we get to sit alongside each other. And then I often have this image of like we're sitting at a drafting table, like looking at a map together or something, exploring something together. Like we get to be in this place of being together. We can have intimacy even when things are hard. We
Hmm.
can feel alive and intimate even when we're looking at something that is so difficult, a
Hmm.
disagreement or grief, different feelings about a major life decision. And that's what's possible there. And
I
I
hear
know we
you.
talk a lot
I
about
hear you
sex, and
saying
there's a
that
lot, yeah.
intimacy doesn't always feel pleasurable.
Oh, whoa, whoa. No, no, I didn't say that. Yeah, that's right. That's totally right.
It is. It is.
Intimacy
But
doesn't mean good and awesome all the time. Intimacy means closeness. Webster says closeness. That's all it is, right? I have a much more
Mhm,
expansive version of that. But the
mhm,
expansive version that I include would be like all of us gets to be here, even the messy stuff and even the hard stuff. And so intimacy
yes.
gets to include ecstasy.
Mhm,
Intimacy gets to include calm. Intimacy gets to include me bawling on my partner's shoulder in pain.
yeah. That you can hold every single part, as they
Yeah,
say in IFS. No bad
yeah,
parts.
right, right. It's all welcome.
No bad parts. So I do want to bring our attention specifically to clinicians because you and I have had off the mic had many conversations together about how to help clinicians identify these things.
Hmm.
We've all been to quite a few trainings where we left and went, okay, I didn't learn anything new.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and some of that is there's lots of these tools have been around a long time, but I think they're learning to attune to our clients takes our career. It
yeah,
really does take
right.
the lifetime of our career.
And it
So
never stops.
no, it doesn't
Yeah,
ever stop. When you think you've got it, that's when you need to retire.
yeah.
Uh, so how can therapists begin to attune in a way that they can start to see and feel the attachment wounds that people are experiencing?
Well, we'll just reverse it back on us, right? That we need
Mhm.
to slow the fuck down.
Yes.
So, so,
Slow the
so
fuck down.
I think about sitting with people, and especially sitting with complex situations, a lot of energy, the importance of learning to feel my own body, feel my own chair. It's these really basic, simple, in practice things that I'm teaching my clients. Um, if somebody's going through a really big response, I want to feel my feet on the floor so that I can be with them. Um, often when I'm a sign, I guess a green flag to me that I'm really attuned to somebody is as they're feeling into their pain, I can feel the caving in my own chest and I can feel the tingling in my own chest and name
Mhm.
that with them and ask them, does that mean anything to you? And like there's something mirroring there for us and our clients that when we're in, it feels like a flow state to me of attunement. Um, we don't need to be overcome by it, but we can feel into a bit of what's going on with them because we're breathing, we're deeply listening, we're understanding, and they can feel that too. And those are the sessions that go by like that for
Mhm.
me. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Absolutely. When you said it's
Yeah,
a flow state, it just occurred to me that that's exactly how it feels to me too. Is
yeah,
that
right.
it is it's a flow state, and it um also like I also love that you brought in that we're talking about green flags for therapists. And
Hmm.
that's going to be the episode title. Um the the idea that it's not wrong as a therapist to shift your attention to your own experience
Right.
and then using that as an instrument
Hmm.
with your clients.
Hmm.
You described what it feels like. When did you start, would you say, like as a clinician, start to be able to really identify that? Because I think again off mic we've both talked about how in graduate school that's something that they don't necessarily teach us. They
That's right.
learning this as being the instrument in the room is not
Hmm.
something we learn or talk about in depth in a lot of programs, especially now.
Right. Yeah.
When do you think that started to happen for you as a clinician?
Yeah. Well, luckily, whereas I don't think my coursework taught me that in grad school, I had an internship that started to put that in my ear. Now, I don't know that I really fully got it then. Not that I fully get it now. Um,
Mhm.
but I do keep seeking teachers and training where there's an emphasis on that, emphasis on how um, the way we are with clients has impact on both of us, and it's important to feel that, and that we can
Mm.
also use that within the relationship. And that
Yeah.
starts with transference, countertransference, right? But there's more modern therapies as well than psychodynamic that teach how to really work with that with clients and how to bring it to the surface. And to me, that's
Hmm.
depth therapy. That's using this
Yes.
relationship as an agent of change.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm most interested and excited about in psychotherapy.
Yes.
Might have gotten a bit off course from what you asked, but
No,
that's
I
where my
think
heart
that
is on it.
it's uh, there we actually have quite a bit of research in our
Hmm.
field that shows that the relationship is the thing that is the
Yeah,
dictator of
that's right.
change.
Yeah,
And so, and we all have our theoretical perspectives that we love, but they are the most effective
hmm,
when the relationship is correct, like the
that's right.
connection is right, and that the
That's
depth
right.
of the relationship can help shift
That's
someone,
right.
or they
That's
can
right.
help shift themselves.
That's right. And it
It
reminds me too of
is.
initial conversations I have with any potential client is my first
Mm,
priority for you, especially as we're starting out, is going to be getting a sense on if this connection is the right connection. It's not just about do
yes.
I do the right therapy or do I have the right time slot for you? It's does
Yes.
this feel like a really great working relationship where I feel like you can get the care you need? And if I
Yes.
don't, for some reason, then I'm going to let you know and find somebody who's better. And I
Yes.
encourage clients to give me that feedback too, because the relationship heavily matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you were. uh, Yes, we're talking about green flags for therapists. So this is still
Yeah.
on topic, I feel,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have essentially the same conversation in the very, very beginning.
Hmm.
I am one that really does like a at least 15 minutes in a consult so we
Yeah.
can talk
Me
through it.
too.
But like one of my favorite things is when somebody's new to therapy and I can
Hmm.
actually teach them this because I
Yeah.
assume that I will not be the only therapist ever in their life.
That's right.
And so I'm like, okay, let's teach you how to do this now so
Yeah.
that when you leave me and you need something else and it's not me, that you can find that person.
Yeah. I love that you're going there because there's also, I think this is helpful, that sense of how you continue that conversation.
Yes.
And really encouraging clients to go beyond, it feels okay when you ask in subsequent sessions around like,
Yes.
how is this relationship to you?
Yes.
Right. And I give that feedback too. This is how it's feeling for me and I wonder how it is for you. And is there anything that you're noticing you could want or need differently? Because we're creating
Right.
an attachment relationship. I see my clients more than I see most of my friends.
Yep.
And that matters.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think you 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 brought up something really important. I think that also is one of those difficult green flags within a therapist to identify, which is when your own attachment wounds are impacting your ability to identify someone else's.
Right.
Talk a
That's
little
a
bit
good
about
one.
that.
That's a good one. Well, we all have our attachment wounds except you, I know.
Oh,
But
yep, I have them. I totally have them.
okay, you do. Um, yeah, and so they can come up in all sorts of ways. I know for myself that one of the reasons why I care so much about working with men, I know we started this conversation when I told you about a men's group I'm starting. I
Hmm.
also know that I've been deeply wounded by men in my life, and it's
Yeah,
something that I
same.
find it really important to watch for myself in session. And if somebody was to do something that reminds me that my father did, that my stepfather did, or whoever else, right?
Hmm.
And how that might impact me and fog me away, right? Kind of like create
Hmm.
those minute parts of dissociation that has me withdraw.
Yeah.
And, there's a skillfulness in working with that and caring for that and getting consult on that. But I do think also there's a skillfulness in realizing when this is something to work through, when this could actually potentially be helpful for a client, and
Mm.
when at certain parts of your life, because of whatever's going on, a client might not be a good fit. and there might be somebody who's better.
Yeah. That you said the word fog,
Hmm.
and that's when you kind of exit the interaction and almost you retreat into your own body.
Yeah,
It is like a fog.
yeah,
And I imagine it's difficult for clinicians to identify that within themselves without slowing the fuck down.
that's right. That's right. And it's never too late to slow the fuck down
Yes.
because you could, there's thunder on my end, by the way. But you can do that even after a session, the green flags and red flags show up, right? We can take a moment to slow down and be curious about, oh, what was that? I feel a little foggy or a little distant, or I notice myself feel disconnected in that session.
Hmm.
And it's never too late to slow down and be curious and then continue that. See if you can bring that into the next session. Let me really observe what's going on here for myself and when it's going on for myself and get
Yeah.
support around it.
Yeah. It, the clinical support, there's nothing that there's throughout your career, and I'll uh, 2X Labs listeners will get real tired of me saying this, and I know that a lot of the people that I interview will say this, that clinical support throughout your career is necessary, not
That's right.
optional.
Yeah. And never stop.
Yes. It doesn't have to be supervision in the sense of like clinical supervision.
Yeah.
It can be with colleagues that you deeply respect,
Yep.
and having those relationships absolutely can help shift all of your work, every
Yeah,
single
I
person
totally agree.
involved.
Yeah. Yeah, and having those relationships, when you have an ongoing consult group with people that you really get to know at a deep level, rather than I think there's all other forms of consult of kind of jumping in a group here and there for a specific skill set or something.
Hmm.
But I think having an ongoing consult with people that you know well and who ongoingly know you better, um,
Yes.
there's an attachment relationship where people can be curious with you about some of the stuff that could come up for you that they've learned about. And also
Yeah.
maybe hold you accountable to looking at some things within yourself and taking space when you need to, considering if clients are a good fit for you. And
Yeah.
that's something I value deeply.
Yeah. It uh I have two sex therapy besties that are my people for that, who
Hmm.
uh, I can go to them not only with my own life things. They're
Hmm.
not my therapists. They are my friends, but they are
Yeah.
therapists by trade, so they can
Yep.
offer things, and they know how I work because we talk about how we
Yeah.
work internally a lot, and that they are wonderful humans, but the gift it gives to my life and my career is I can't trade it. And I do think that that's probably one of the difficult things to try to find as maybe early in the career therapists, uh,
Hmm.
because I hear from especially any of the supervisees that I've had, they are very concerned they're going to do it wrong.
Yeah. Of course.
So if you have a consult group, it's very difficult to like let yourself talk about maybe when you have, or when
Yeah.
you have felt a session go sideways,
Right.
or when you've had your own stuff, your own attachment wounds come up, because that is a level of vulnerability and honesty that
And
takes
humility.
it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And to have somebody else, my experience anyway, is the more that you enter that space of vulnerability, other people can also meet you there
Yes.
when you're in the right consult group, right? And so there's also a sense of like, I'm not the only one. Because so often we have those days, a session maybe goes awry or we lose track of something. Um,
Hmm.
then there's so much judgment that can come up about ourselves around like maybe I'm a shit therapist, right? But having somebody else who knows that exact experience in different situations is really helpful.
Yeah.
And it can help you grow and learn from them as you go. Not that you're never going to be perfect, ever going to be perfect, but you can continue to grow.
Yeah. That
Back
the
to green flags and relationships.
Hey,
Green
you
flags
know
and
what?
consult relationships.
That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
this is all encompassing. I think that's the point
Uh-huh.
of this entire episode is yes, we're talking about how do we help our clients, but as clinicians, how do we prepare ourselves to be the best instrument?
Right. Right.
And that's not, and that is much harder, I think, to do than just look for yet another skill. Um, and I don't say that with judgment. I just think it's difficult. I think it is difficult work. I think it is part of the work. So,
Is there
I,
something then around, tell me if this goes off track, but I was
mhm,
curious around the idea around where our personal and professional lives converge
mm,
and how we intertwine when we think about grounding and attunement, how I think that extends beyond our professional world. I think that extends in also how we live our lives. I
yes,
wonder if that fits for you.
I, I, I personally very much think it does.
Mhm.
Um, Especially when solve I don't want to say I don't know if it's solving and it's the word that's coming to mind, so I'm going to use it. Yeah, solving or tackling interpersonal rifts, especially professionally or personally. So
Yeah.
professionally, I mean like between me and another therapist. Uh if I can handle that, then I can, at least for me, I feel braver, not brave,
Yeah.
braver
Yeah, right.
to tackle it in my personal life.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
So
about
it
for
can
you?
translate. I love that thinking of, I was thinking personal, professional. I love thinking it also, we learn so much in our professional lives that translates directly to our personal lives.
Yes.
So thank you for that. That's helpful for me to think of too. And I was thinking of how I've been in different phases of my life where I am more or less attuned and mindful in my personal life. And
Mm,
that absolutely impacts how I am as a therapist. Even
yes.
just my many years long journey with meditation of having a daily practice for over a year without missing a day.
Hmm.
Having years where maybe I do it a fourth of the time.
Yeah.
Um, and noticing that difference, which is huge. Not that we have to be meditators every single day,
Hmm.
but something like the importance of having something that helps me connect to myself, my experience, and ground in it so I can bring in the energy and like the culture of slowing down in therapy sessions is
Mm,
really important for me.
yeah. I think we just talked about it from just the different directions.
Yeah,
What you
right.
just said about the meditation practice is, I think, I have been, uh, I've had a regular meditation practice for since my bachelor's degree. But
Mhm.
this, I would say, the last 2 years, it has been more what you said about it being a quarter of the time, whereas I
Right.
was regularly meditating before that,
Yeah.
usually on a daily basis.
Uh-huh.
But I do think that the other direction, the less present I am in my personal life, definitely informs the therapy room for me.
That's right.
Now I'm gonna have to take that to my consult group. Thanks for that, Joe. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. So I do think
Got
that those uh the attachment wounds inside of ourselves as clinicians are integral to understand and to be working on continuously because of how it shows up in the room with our people. But I do want to I'm kind of thinking of the early therapists in this episode
it.
in early in their career and how we can help them identify skills for themselves to slow down, and then how we would teach those same skills to our clients.
Mhm. Well, I typically uh, talk about things by doing them with clients. So what I might say to a client and a
Hmm.
supervisee um, is to notice how it is, just to start noticing your breath, the way that it is right now. No need to change it. And notice as I start to talk, I also start to leave gaps of space in between my words and sentences. That's intentional. We just have space to like maybe slow this down, slow our minds down. And as you're aware of your breath, let yourself be also aware of the sensation of it. Maybe starting from your nose, going down your lungs, in and out.
I'm just going to do this, Joe. Just saying.
Great. And by the way, as I'm doing this, I'm able to slow my mind down too. This is like a collective thing.
Hmm.
I can feel more attuned to you. That might also suggest that if our feet touch the floor, if our feet touch something, just to let our feet wiggle a bit, maybe press and release. You can also do this with your hands. Maybe even kind of wave back and forth, like a seesaw.
I was going the other direction.
Great. All directions. The point of this is that when we start to teach people to slow the fuck down,
Hmm.
we're teaching people by doing it.
Yeah.
And even now, what I notice is like I can feel my energy start to like kind of just drop a little bit, but I'm awake.
Hmm.
A little less in my head about what are we talking next, and a little just more present and being with you.
Hmm. I I noticed a similar experience. The My mind went from time management of the interview
Right.
to the space, like in where the energy went to my chest and then my stomach.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone who's listening, if you're not driving, that you did the same with us, because this is what that can feel like.
Mhm. And when I'm in a session, we catch up in the beginning, you know. We might talk a bit about the story, but when we talk about processing things, whether that's in a couple session, helping people slow the fuck down to connect to each other, or we're helping somebody be really aware of their inner experience or address trauma, sessions more feel like this.
Mhm.
We get out of the surface, out of just the buzzing of the mind, and into felt experience. And what we're doing then is we're teaching supervisees, we're teaching clients, teaching ourselves to more and more be an observer of our experience, which also creates ongoingly a safer container to explore our experience and our relationships.
The I noticed that for both of us, as we were talking about it, the tone of our voice changed. And of course, the space between words changed.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the listener can identify that the space between their thoughts changed.
Yeah.
It's not easy as someone is new to experiencing sessions as intensely as you can in moments when someone is trying to process an attachment wound.
Mm-hmm.
I think that intensity can really, when you're learning these pieces, the intensity is the thing that clinically early in our careers will run from.
That's right.
Because most of us like had no idea growing up like that
Right.
was the case. Like,
Yeah.
oh, these big emotions inside of myself are things I can't that I will not die from.
Right. Yeah. And we might be worried that our clients might, explode in a way, right? Like get so overwhelmed that
Hmm.
maybe we'll do harm.
Yeah.
And in fact, inviting them into understanding how to slow down, how to get a bit more connected to the present moment in their own way. Everybody has different needs.
Hmm.
But that also allows them to slow their experience down and decrease the chances of overwhelm. There's a whole other caveat about how to do that with certain kinds of trauma, but probably for another conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we can definitely do a whole other hour on probably each one. So, I mean, I do want to make sure that here as we come to the end of our time, what would you say are some of the specific green flags that clients could be looking for in partners when they're assessing for potential healthy and supportive relationships? And then we're going to talk about therapists yet
Yeah,
again.
cool, cool, great. So first, I'll say some suggestions and generalizations, knowing that everybody's different, and a listener might think, well, I'd say it a little differently, and I would say, great, please do, please expand
Hmm.
on that and write your own.
Hmm.
Um, but some common things I would say, if we're looking for like safer relationships to explore some depth, some vulnerability, something meaningful. Um, would be one for me, like I said, like something who is explicit about like them being curious about themselves, who they are, um, wanting to change things, not as like a shame space, but change things as in like just they're interested. Um, I also look for somebody who takes accountability. We make mistakes all the time, we misspeak all the time, and nobody's perfect. And somebody who can say, "Oh, hey, I'm sorry, that came out wrong. Uh, I'd like to try that again." Or I hear you that you're really hurt about what I said, and I really want to work with you on repairing that. Um, that's a major green flag for me. Um, those are two big ones. But somebody, I think you said it earlier, somebody who really stays with you and is curious about you. Keep in mind that that's really easy for a lot of people in the honeymoon stage of a relationship. And so when you're
Yes.
thinking about dating longer term and moving into partnership and thinking about bigger life decisions, see how these things change.
Hmm.
Because a honeymoon stage for somebody can be 2 weeks to 2 years. It can be different for everyone. But see, once you really start getting comfortable with each other, you deal with some of the mundane of life. Do these things carry over?
Yeah.
And that's really important and telling to me. I do try to avoid like massive life decisions without letting that change happen, right? Like seeing who we
Yes.
really are when our cards are on the
Yes.
table, our messiness is
Hmm.
on the table because everybody's got messiness.
Hmm.
So look out for those things when you start to see somebody for being more relaxed and not trying to put on as much of a show as we all do when we're getting to know people.
We all put out our plumage and our feathers
Yeah.
and peacock. We all
Hmm.
do it and try to put the best version of ourselves, especially during that honeymoon phase. And I think you're right that the what are the things that are consistent once you have started to move away from the honeymoon
Hmm.
phase.
Yep.
And those are can be the things of a long-term relationship if that's what someone wants.
That's
Now, back to helping therapists slow the fuck down. Like,
right. Hmm.
how can therapists help a client slow down and study their experiences. We did an experiential version of that,
Mhm.
but would you say that relies in that lies in their own practice? Would you say that their practice of mindfulness, their practice of attunement? What would you say for therapists?
Yeah, one is your own practice. And just to tell you how I learned it by being a part of meditation communities over the years. I learned by studying psychotherapies that have mindfulness as a center pillar in the work. Um, and so doing it over and over again in a therapeutic context. Um, these days I could say maybe seeking a supervisor who also like practices that and is going to be supportive of your journey with that and
Mm-hmm.
consult group. Um, and then when you're sitting with clients, I really encourage you to have those simple practices with people. You can start a session by that way. Sometimes, especially when I know, for some people it is every session, but sometimes I'll notice with a couple and they're coming in and they're really hot, right? There's something that's going to go on. I'll
Mm-hmm.
often invite people into a practice of mindfulness, just saying that, hey, I know there's conflict here. I know there's a lot of energy here. And I wonder if we could slow it down for a moment, just initially, to breathe, think about our intentions, think about what each one of us can do in this
Mm-hmm.
situation. And just breathe at that for a few minutes. Let your heart rate settle. Think about why we're here too, you know. And um, I think that's a great way to start. This doesn't have to be a very complex process. Help people
Mm-hmm.
be in simple ways with themselves and others, and you do it for yourself too. And you're going to have a lot more space to explore all the stuff that you need to.
Yeah. The intentionality within yourself as a clinician, and even as you go into those early parts of a session, identifying, is this a moment where I can slow down and they can slow down?
Mhm.
I love to do that with couples, make them
Yeah, me too.
slow down before
Yeah,
we get into whatever
yeah,
the fight we're going to deconstruct
yeah.
that
I
happened.
think there's also something, this comes up for me a lot in supervision with people, um, because you might find yourself asking, well, like, I'm a year deep with this couple or this person, and how would I just do that? And I think it comes back to having conversations about anything you're going to do. That could
Mm-hmm.
be, for me, it's at the start of therapy. I often introduce something for a session or two. They know that it's a part of how I work. We have agreements around how we work. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not like it's random. It's more like, this is the way that I work. Is that interesting to you? You want to see what that's like, what I mean? And that's the way that we start attuning to each other. But even if you're 2 years deep with a client and you want to introduce a different way of working, you can let them know. I was listening to something or reading something, um, and I want to try something a bit different. And I wonder if you'd be open to that. And I think that's always a great way to introduce something and bring somebody in. It doesn't have to feel
Mm-hmm.
awkward and random. It can start with presenting that this is the way that I'm caring about you now. I thought about you as I studied something.
I actually use the phrase, I'm just going to pull back the curtain on Oz here for a second.
I love that. I always talk
Because
about
that's,
under the surface, but I love that.
well, because I, I,
Yeah,
I think that clients don't get the window into why does this thing thaneracy work?
yeah, me
Why
too.
does it work?
Yeah,
And we don't need to give them the dissertation version of that,
yeah,
but
yeah,
asking permission, being clear, giving
yeah,
tons of context about
yeah.
why you're doing a thing or why you're talking about a
Right.
thing,
I
or
tell people, let
even
me in you into my evil plans.
yes,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
let me bring you over to the dark side. Let me pull back the
Hmm.
curtain. Let me
Hmm.
expose what this is because I want you to know. I want you to
Yeah, right,
know this shouldn't be you. I really don't want you feeling like you're on a used car lot when it
right.
comes to therapy.
And when we're talking about creating safer spaces for each other, this is really essential. We don't want to surprise people, actually. We want people to know as best they can what they're getting
Yes,
into and also have consent. Are
absolutely.
you interested in trying this with me? Yeah.
Yes. Are you game?
Mhm. Come on.
So I think as we wrap up, I do want because we can go in so deep about how each kinds of trauma impacts attachment wounds. We can do all of those things, but I think what you offered today was a way that it can be experiential for you as a clinician, and Joe, I just appreciate that. But what key takeaways would you really like our listeners to remember when it comes to learning for themselves, but also teaching our clients about green flags?
There's a core around here around attunement, as we started with, right? And that attunement is a practice and it takes work. It's a skillfulness. It's not you're doing it or you're not. So one, I say that because I hope anyone listening can give themselves the space to be in an ongoing process of learning. Not like, oh, you do this tomorrow, and if you tried, you failed.
Mhm.
Keep working and be light on yourself. Be caring for yourself and the practices that you take to slow down, the ways that you work with your clients, and be experimental with what it might be like to introduce a practice, to get consent around a practice, to notice how you feel about something. Um, and also when you're looking for green flags, like, be compassionate for yourself as you're giving yourself the space to attune to yourself. To be curious, does this really work for me or not? And people are talking about dating, the therapists who are thinking about their relationships, their clients. Um, I didn't get to it, but I thought about talking about today that somatic yes and no. But quickly, I do think sometimes you can like drop in when you're able to slow down and think like, how does this feel inside of me?
Mm.
When this person acts this way with me, how does this physically feel inside of me? Is it like an old sandwich that I don't really want to eat?
Soggy bread on the bottom.
Soggy bread on the bottom that's been in the
Mhm.
fridge too long?
Ugh.
Or is it like just the right treat for me, right?
Mhm.
Or is it not quite even? Is it like maybe this could be a good treat? So maybe I have some boundaries as I move towards something.
Mhm.
That's great too.
Doesn't need to go in the
Again,
air
that could
fryer
be a
before I
whole
eat
other
it.
thing, but yeah, right, exactly. So need a little sprinkle.
I just isn't an old does this feel like an old sandwich? Oh, that's gonna be one of the takeaways for sure. So I mean finally like Joe, I'm always I feel lucky to hold space with you and sit with you, and I'm so grateful that you came on 2X Labs. So where can clinicians and or any of our listeners find you in the world? How can they work
Sure.
with you or be supervised by you, whatever you're doing?
Yeah, yeah. So you can find me on my website, joelmolinari.com. You can also find me on the New Yorker is always right there. You can find me on Instagram, Sex Therapy Joe. I recently opened a TikTok. I just started experimenting with that. Um, and LinkedIn, Joe Molinari. I do a men's group starting in a couple weeks. It's going to be an attachment-related men's group on Tuesday nights. You could be anywhere for that. I'm not doing it as a therapist, more as a guide.
Mhm.
And also currently taking uh, folks wanting to be supervised for licensure or for sex therapy supervision.
Love it. Again,
Yep.
thank you so very much. And folks, I thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you want more wonderful education from 2X Labs, jump into our membership and you will hear from Joe and other people like Joe, likely Joe more than once. So we thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.